Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
And we are joined this morning, finally we are joined back by popular demand, because he was supposed to be on last week, but obviously I was feeling a little unwell, shall we say. But I'm delighted to say that Javier Osasuro and Madeleine Bull from Spence, Clarke have joined me this morning. Good morning, Javier.
Good morning, Giles. So you are feeling better, I hope.
If I was feeling any worse, you would be standing over my grave putting flowers down, I can assure you. You look well.
Yeah, well, we are in our favorite time of the year, I would say. So
your favourite time of the year?
I need to look healthy.
Is it tax return time? Is that It's the most wonderful time of the year. Madeleine, how are you this morning?
Very well as well.
Good. Okay, so what are we talking about this morning? And what is the thing this morning? I believe he said. We've got. Is it time for the
the annual annual returns, income tax, wealth tax, and great fortunes tax, which in Spanish
is.
I know you know how to say that.
The grande fortunas, the huge. But I mean, isn't it? It's things come around so quickly. It's like Christmas comes around very quickly, and it was only seems like yesterday we were talking about the M720 tax declaration.
Yeah.
But it's just the start. So what are the yearly sort of tax deductions that individuals? What's the next one up then? What have we got to look forward to?
Well, now between now and July, we have the main individual tax declarations for the year. For the Spanish tax residents, of course. These are income tax, wealth tax, and impuestos sobre las grandes fortunas, great fortunes tax. The income and wealth tax declarations, when applicable, are both due by 30th of June. And you also have to, if these are payable, you have to pay those by that time, with the exemption of the income tax, which you can split the payments between June and November, without any kind of penalties, interest, or such things that the tax office wants to apply normally. However, for the wealth tax, this is 100% payable by 30th of June if you have to submit one. For great fortunes tax, if you need to submit this declaration, this needs to be done before 31st of July. So that's 1 month after the others.
So who needs then to submit an income tax declaration?
In general terms, everyone, unless you are explicitly exempt. This is different from other countries where filing a tax return is not that common for many people. For most who live and work in Spain, the filings are not complicated. Generally, you are not required to file a Modelo 100, an income tax return, if you only have income from one employer, and this income gross is below 22,000 euros. Right. However, you will have to file if you have earned more than those 22,000 euros from the single employer, or if you have more than one employer and the second and other employer's income is over 1,500 euros, and your total income is over 15,876 euros. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Or if you have received other types of income, like foreign income, salaries, fees, pensions, again, over the 15,800 that I mentioned before. If you have rental income over 1,000 euros, which is a very low limit, people think that this applies for this kind of income applies the same rule of the 22 and the 50,000, but this is not the case. Wow. For rental income or dim income, if it is over 1,000, you have to submit. For investment income, you have to submit if it is over 1,600 euros. And we are always talking about worldwide income, not only Spanish income, which is, we would go into that.
Can I ask a question here?
Of course.
So if you've got, say I'm working, this is for personal. This isn't company. This is personal.
This is personal. Yeah.
So, for example, I've got a job with a supermarket, okay, and I bring in. I've got one employer, but I've got like a side hustle. I've got a website, or I've got a Shopify page or something like that to sell, because I'm a painter. I do cuadros or something like that, right? So if I have this little side hustle that brings in more than 1,600.
That will be for investment, but in essence, if you are self-employed, you always have to submit a declaration. Fine. Regardless if you have already income below the limits.
Okay.
So it's always checking about the limits, what type of income.
All right. But this is worldwide income?
Worldwide income, absolutely. And finally, if you want to claim some benefits like maternity or paternity deductions, that you have bought a home before, contributions to pensions plans, you will always have to file to ensure that you can apply this, especially in the future.
Okay. What about the we've got contributions to pension plans. You've got to file that as well. So if none of the above apply, yeah. I mean, is there no need to submit an income? I'm thinking. I know what the answer is going to be. It's going to be to put one in. Submit a declaration, because otherwise, Is that? I mean, is there an obligation? You have to. If none of the above apply, is there no need to submit a tax declaration?
There's no actual obligation by the tax office. However, even if you're not obliged, we would always advise that filing an income tax declaration can be very useful, especially to ensure things like your tax residency status, which can be necessary for renewing your residencia, your TRE, or to claim certain tax exemptions that are only available for residents.
Okay, what about, the two ones that obviously apply to me hugely? That is, of course, the wealth tax and the tax on grandi fortunas, the great fortunes tax.
Yeah, your favourite.
My favourite tax.
Yeah. So, the general rule for wealth tax is that if anybody has a net wealth of 700,000 euros with an additional allowance of 300,000 on their usual dwelling, will have to submit a wealth tax declaration.
Okay.
But like we've discussed before, this particular tax actually depends on each autonomous region. Okay, so in some regions, like for instance Catalonia, the limit is as low as 500,000 euros. Mm-hmm. However, there are a number of regions that are actually improving this general limit, or even applying 100% exemption or increasing each year. So currently, there is no wealth tax payable for wealth under 3.7 million in Andalusia, Cantabria, Madrid and Murcia. Yeah. Also, the Balearic Islands have raised their minimum wealth to 3 million. And even Valencia, which was one of the lowest thresholds with 500,000 euros, has also currently increased their threshold to 1 million.
That's a change of policy, isn't it? They suddenly say, hang on. We've seen what, the Balearics and Andalusia is doing right.
Makes a difference.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Other areas?
Yeah, so other areas have actually maintained the threshold of 700,000 euros, but they've applied reductions, like, for instance, in Galicia, they actually apply a 50% reduction to the result. It is important to know, though, that even if the allowance is higher or the wealth tax is exempt in these regions, if your total assets are above 2 million, you still have to submit a declaration, but for informative purposes, so you won't actually have to pay any tax on it.
Right.
Okay. And then about the tax on great fortunes, in general terms, this will need to be submitted for anybody with a net wealth over 3.7 million. Again,
worldwide.
Right, yes.
Okay.
And you'll find there's articles and guides on our website that go into this in more detail.
Okay. I mean, if we go back to income tax, what do I need to declare in my Spanish tax declaration?
Every single penny you have earned last year. And as we have said, a Spanish tax resident will have to declare any worldwide income they have received, regardless if the income has been already taxed, if it is exempt in any other country. The first assumption is you have to declare that in Spain.
Right.
That will be any pension income, state pensions, occupational pensions, private pensions, government pensions. Even though some of them are not taxed in Spain, you have to include those in the declaration to determine the tax rate that applies to the rest of your income. Any work income, although there are some exemptions that apply, like the 60,100 for work physically done outside of Spain.
Yeah.
Investment income, dividends, interest, income from self-employment activities, rental income and dim income from second homes. Yeah. We have mentioned this dim income, which is not that usual in other countries, but just for having a second home, which is not your main home, even in Spain or outside of Spain, you have to pay some tax. It does not matter that the property is just there and you only use that on a holiday. There is some tax that will apply to that. Finally, of course, any capital gains or capital losses from sale of property, shares, or any other type of gains. as I say at the beginning, every single penny, you will have to report that.
Here's something that always worries people, and I know a lot of listeners, because they go, well, I've got a pension in the UK, or I've got a pension in Ireland. Am I going to be taxed on that again? I mean, that's always, what happens if the income has already been sort of taxed in a different country?
Well, basically, it depends on the nature of the income and if there is a double tax treaty in place, and if there is one, whatever is stated in that particular treaty. Okay,
Right.
so for example, somebody that receives rental income from a property in the UK may have to submit a tax declaration in the UK on this income, as the property is physically there. But additionally, they'll have to, as a Spanish tax resident, they'll have the obligation to declare the income in Spain as well.
Yeah.
To avoid the double taxation, the double tax treaty will allow you to deduct the tax paid in the UK from the Spanish income tax declaration. The same happens, for example, with capital gains from the sale of a property.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, what happens with pensions? I mean, I have many people who have a pension in the UK and they pay their taxes there instead of in Spain.
That does actually happen quite a lot, but it's not correct, okay? So
Okay.
the double tax treaty between Spain and the UK actually states that the UK cannot tax pensions of Spanish tax residents. These taxes need to be paid exclusively in Spain, okay? Therefore, if they do pay tax in the UK, they will not be able to deduct this tax from the Spanish declaration, with the exemption of government pensions that we've mentioned before, or only taxed in the UK.
Okay. Is there a sort of a way to solve that particular issue then?
Yes, so you'll need to complete a form that's available in the Inland Revenue webpage, and attach to the form a certificate of tax residency that is issued by the Spanish tax office and will confirm that you are a Spanish tax resident. Then the Inland Revenue will then stop taxing you on the income.
Right.
And this can also be done backwards to obtain a refund, okay? So if you've paid it beforehand, then you could request it back.
And being sort of Spanish tax resident is different from being just a Spanish resident, or having a TIE. I mean, yeah. Just because people begin.
There are different rules.
Yeah.
So to be a Spanish tax resident, you have to look to the rules that are shown in the tax office itself.
Yeah.
The general ones are being here more than 183 days,
Yeah.
that the center of your economic interest is here, that your life is also here.
Yeah.
Those things make you a Spanish tax resident. And residency is the ability to come to Spain to be here with legally, let's say.
Yeah. Okay.
So, for example, if you are on the Schengen area or out of the Schengen area, to be more than 90 days in the 180 days. So these are different concepts. Having a residency does not mean that you are a tax resident, but of course it's an indication. It will be an open door for the tax office to check on that.
Is this talking about pensions, as we were saying before? I mean, we're talking about solving the issue. Is that a case with all foreign pension, or is this another UK quirk, as we'd say?
Well, it changes from one country to another. So, for example, US citizens can be taxed in the US on all of their income, including pension income. Canadian source pensions can be taxed in Canada up to 15%, including the government pensions. So, in essence, it will vary depending on whatever's stated in the tax treaty, if there is one.
Right. Okay. Allowances and exemptions. I mean, do they exist in Spain? How do they work in Spain?
Well, they exist. They are not very famous. They are not very generous either. But as we have a decentralized system, we have to split the allowances that exist for the income tax between general ones and regional deductions. At the general level, we can find some to be aware of, which like the basic employment reduction of 2,000 euros, which applies automatically. It can increase also for lower incomes. We also have the general personal tax allowance that everyone has of 5,550, which again increase depending on your personal circumstances, like having kids or a disability, things like that. There is also the well-known Article 7P of the income tax law, the 60,100 euros exemption for work done outside of Spain, but it's subject to very strict conditions. So it's worthwhile checking that before applying it. In terms of capital gains, the sale of a main residence can be exempt if the proceeds are reinvested in a new home or if the seller is over 65 years of age. To qualify, This is important.
Yeah.
The property must have been your main home for at least 3 years as a tax resident of Spain. So it's not just having owned the property for more than 3 years, and any time you come to Spain, you were using that. It's living in Spain as a tax resident in this property. The property needs also to be sold within 2 years after moving out.
Okay.
For rental income, we have the standard reduction of 50% if you rent out the property on a long-term basis as a residential home. It can increase up to 90%, but it needs to meet certain conditions that are very strict, like especially for Malaga, Barcelona, and Madrid areas, which are very demanding for rental.
Yeah.
You can apply some deductions if your rental is under the market value. As we mentioned at the beginning of the year in one of our first shows, there is also regional reductions that can be quite interesting, like the gym memberships or veterinary expenses.
Yeah.
So we always recommend to check on our website, where we have a guide for this.
I've got a question coming in on WhatsApp. It says, "Good morning, Giles." That's me. And the Spence Clarke team representatives. That's you guys. I received a surprise. Here we go. Ready? I received a surprise gift of a cash payment into my bank here from someone in the UK. I'm now being told that I have to pay tax on this gift. It's a small amount, and I'm startled to think that I must pay tax on a gift that was sent for my birthday.
Yes, indeed. Gifts are subject to tax, but it's not income tax, it's gift tax, which is has different rulings. So
it's not an impuesto de regalos. No, is it really cool? No,
impuesto sobre donaciones is called in Spanish.
Okay.
ISD. So in essence, depending on your relationship with the person that has given you the gift, the tax can be painful or not, and of course, depending on the amount that you are receiving.
I'd like to see having to explain to Hacienda what your relationship is. Some person, so can you tell me about how close are you to this?
No, in essence, our family relationships, of course. So if the gift comes from your parents, it can be bonified 99%, but there are certain rules that you need to meet, like going to the notary for the signature, things like that. So it will depend on the type of relationship, but yes, you will always have to submit a gift tax on this.
It's going to the bank account. I mean, the bank would have. I mean, I'm not. I would imagine we're not talking. His 5 million. I mean, I might. But if it's say, I don't know, 50 euros, 100 euros, you still got to. The bank wouldn't. I mean, it's. Yeah.
I mean, it depends. If the amount is, there is something in Spain called something that is habitual.
Yeah.
For general. So if something that happens commonly. And your parents give you every time for your birthday, they give you 1,000 euros. You are not going to declare that as a gift.
Your parents are very different from my parents, I can assure you.
But if the amount is 500,000 euros, then that makes a difference. So it's about checking the amount and the obligation and see if you have to do a gift tax or not.
Well, listen, I think the best thing to do if you get worried about it is obviously to check out with, go to the Spence Clarke website. I'm sure they can help you on that. Now, others, because obviously social security regulations, self-employed workers, because they all seem to be out of the, a special favourite of Hacienda. What are the social security regulations for self-employed workers, and how is that going to affect income tax?
When the new system for social security contributions came into effect a couple of years ago, they changed that the way you pay the social security is now based on your actual earnings. It's not that you decide whether or not you want to pay the maximum contribution or the lower. Now, depending on your earnings, you have to pay between a range of social security contributions. So you pay this social security based on estimates that you do on your own, expecting how much income you are going to do over the year, and based on that, you pay the social security. And once the income tax is filed at the end of the year, the social security office recalculates how much you should have paid.
Right.
This leads to a regularization, either paying additional money or receiving a refund. And at least this is not a penalty, so it's just an adjustment. So there is no interest that needs to be taken in account for this. From a tax perspective, if you have, the important point is timing, when this regularization is done. because the adjustment is applied on the year the payment is done, not the year the contribution is related to. So, for example, if you paid in 2025 additional Social Security contributions related to the year 2024, you will have to include this regularization in your 2025 year, not in 2024. So this avoids the need to amend a previous return for having declared something incorrectly.
Okay. Anything else important to take into account when we're preparing? I mean, apart from keep calm and carry on, when you're preparing the income tax declarations?
Yes, so there are a couple of practical points that can often be overlooked but can actually cause real issues. The first one is to make sure that your bank account is set up as a resident account linked to your NIE number. This is because the tax office actually identifies accounts by the NIE rather than the name. So if the account is still set up as a non-resident account using a passport number, the payments can be rejected, which can lead to late payments and penalties, even if the intention was to pay the tax on time. The second one is to make sure that the tax office has your correct address on record. Okay, this is done through the M030 form and should be updated whenever you change address. Though this can seem like a minor administrative step, it's actually very important because the tax office sends official notifications, including inspection notices, by post to the registered address. They usually only allow a very short deadline to respond, often around 10 working days. And if you don't reply on that time, the tax office may just proceed on the basis that their position is correct, resulting in additional tax payments and potential penalties.
Right, because because whilst everything sort of seems to be always done by an app or online, this is really important because they do send out physically, the envelope, and if you've moved, changed office address, that you can't say, "Oh, I didn't get it." It's the one case, isn't it? It's really, really important that you let them know you've changed address.
Definitely.
Okay. Any advice for those who have simple declaration? You see, there is no such thing as a simple declaration, is there? I mean, when it comes to are there any advice to have a simple declaration they can prepare themselves? And having filed myself, there is no such thing as a simple declaration for tax.
Not really. As simple as a declaration may seem, there are always lots of rules and regulations because the way the law is written is I think is to catch you up in the nicest, but just in case anybody from Hacienda is listening, in the nicest possible way, not catch you out, just be more informed, surely. Yeah,
for the good of the community in general.
Yeah, now that we have the different Minister of Hacienda.
Yes, exactly. So,
because Montero has gone to the Andalucía elections, and now things are cada espada, so
okay. Let's
see how that goes. So those are the ones that put the regulations. So you need to be careful when submitting an income tax declaration. Especially if you have non-Spanish income, because the draft that the tax office gives you does not include anything of that. And therefore you will have to include that manually and be very careful when including that type of income in your declaration. Also, sometimes the information that the tax office has beforehand is either incorrect or inaccurate, because as it comes from third parties, including that information on your behalf, it does not always reflect the reality, and neither the most favorable option for submitting, like a joint declaration or individual declaration between spouses. And finally, now that we are in the age of the AI, I will say do not rely on what the AI can tell you about. Okay, because it's more common. I mentioned this last year, and you laugh at me when saying someone will use the AI to do a declaration.
And they did.
But I think that now people are relying on the AI to get advice.
That is no. I mean,
you have to be careful. You have to know at least some. You have to have some background of taxes to see if what the AI is telling you is right or wrong.
Yeah, to put it mildly. I mean, I would always say, even if you think you have a simple tax case, having had some experience with Hacienda, knowing how they operate, it will save you time and pain to just go to
stress
to go to spend half an hour or whatever to have you, somebody like Spence Clarke overlook the paperwork because you're not going to get a fine or an embargo or whatever you're going to get from Hacienda because they can, and it's very, they have the right to, but spending some time with you guys is going to send an awful lot of and certainly I would never put my stuff through AI.
Absolutely. But
so if people want to find out more information, I know that you've got a very active website. I know the blogs are brilliant. So where should they go? Even if they had a small gift into their account, and they're not expecting anything that you think might be taxable, where should they go?
You can visit our website, www.spenceclarke, Spence with an E and Clarke with an E, .com. And there you will see all the different sections with articles, guides, also pictures of our staff and the parties that we do from time to time. So now it's only during the summer and the Christmas. So we do not party that much.
Yeah, okay. Just one more quick question before you go. Because you can make various things of declarations on this tax and everything. So presumably anything that I spent on myself trying to get better last week, ibuprofen, all the stuff from the pharmacia, will that go as a tax deduction as well?
If you are able to explain the tax inspector that medicine was necessary
for my employment,
for your appointment or for your activity, then you'll be able to do so. But because that is what the legislation says, any expense that is strictly related to your activity can be offset. So maybe they allow you to, on the total cost of the medicine, if you take one pill, then you will have to do a...
So, it's €2 ibuprofen, there are 30 a packet, so I took 5 of them, there we go.
Yeah.
Listen, Javier and Malena from Spence Clarke, it's been great to speak to you. Thank you for bearing with me last week, that was because it was a last minute thing, I know, and so sorry for the inconvenience. Great to see you. Just give us please give me the website one more time.
www.spenceclarke.com.
As always, thank you very much for your time. Always approachable, and we'll speak to you very, very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.